Imagine that life on our planet was once different from now. Of course, you can imagine yourself as a medieval knight or even a fighting, thanks to historical movies and TV shows and a bit from school textbooks. But what about when no one is around? But what about when there were no people on Earth at all? Or were there once separate human ancestors who lived so far back in the past that they weren't even remembered by Hollywood? Although scientists haven't invented the time machine yet, I suggest you look at the history of our planet with your own eyes. First of all, let's go back in time 4,600,000,000 years ago. Our Earth does not exist yet. There is only a newly formed protozone and rings of gas and dust that are a very beautiful scenery. But we are interested in something a little different forward in time. A little bit. 4,540,000,000 years ago, our planet was formed when it was too far to be habitable. The conditions on Earth were absolutely terrible. Instead of the usual scene, there is a sea of fire from molten rock. There are radioactive elements all around, and the surface temperature reaches 4,700 degrees Celsius, or 8,492 Fahrenheit. There is no air, but carbon dioxide, nitrogen, sulfur, and water vapor. There is no solid land, but magmatic oceans. Add in the constant bombardment of large asteroids, and you get a picture that looks more like the end of the Earth than it began after a few million years as a result of collisions with young planet named Theia Moon gradually formed. Indeed, in the past, a day only lasted about 6 hours. With such a short day, making time for anything was out of the question. Fortunately, there are no working days yet. From about 4,100,000,000 years ago to 3,800,000,000 years ago, the late heavy bombardment hit the Earth, a large number of asteroids. Some scientists argue that at this time there were oceans on Earth despite the high temperatures. I honestly hardly believe it. But who am I to argue with scientists? It is these asteroids that helped the planet become gradually waterlogged. According to one theory, asteroids carried small amounts of life-giving moisture and delivered it to Earth. This is how it was for billions of years. About half of the world's ocean water came to Earth from outer space after the bombardment ended about 3,800,000,000 years ago. Earth's temperature slowly began to decrease, but current life forms were unable to survive on the planet's surface because there is no oxygen in its atmosphere and no ozone layer to block ultraviolet radiation. However, there are fossils that are around 3,500,000,000 years old, which means life on Earth could have appeared much earlier than we think. From 3,200,000,000 to the 2,800,000,000 years ago, almost the entire surface of the planet is occupied by shallow oceans whose temperatures range from 55 to 88 degrees Celsius, or 131 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit. However, microorganisms already inhabit these hot springs. The land is simply volcanic islands that slowly grow over time. Just imagine how hot that is. The days began to lengthen from about 2 billion to 500,000,000 years ago. The first supercontinent, Kenorland, began to form. Okay, let's fast forward a little more. 1,500,000,000 years ago. A day on Earth now lasts at least 16 hours. Although complex organisms still did not exist, the lithospheric plates continued to move, and after 400,000,000 years created another supercontinent, Rodinia, and after some time, Pangaea formed. Around 650,000,000 years ago, according to popular theory, our planet was a snowball. Literally, this theory is called a snowball Earth. Scientists assumed that everything was completely covered in ice, and even the equator was as cold as modern Antarctica. It's scary to think what the temperature was at the poles at that time. Even under a thick layer of ice, the Earth maintains a high enough temperature. There is no ice age that can kill volcanoes and carbon dioxide from their eruptions that accumulates in the atmosphere, gradually melting glaciers. This melting releases large amounts of oxygen that change Earth. About 541,000,000 years ago, the Cambrian explosion occurred temperatures that increased to 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and the concentration of oxygen led to the emergence of a large number of living organisms. The biodiversity is so impressive. Some creatures even develop exoskeletons to prevent other creatures from eating them. Scientists believe that almost all existing animal species appeared during this period. One day at this time was up to 22 hours long. In 450 million years ago, plants and arthropods began to actively dominate the land. 419 million years ago, the first insects appeared, and about 300 million years ago, most of our planet was occupied by swamps. Many scientists like Professor Frederick Rich held this view, but ancient swamps were not like modern swamps. Some plants reach a height of 30 m or about 100 feet, and giant insects fly everywhere. This is because the high oxygen levels at this time. Fortunately, the great ancestor of modern dragonflies did not survive to the present day, Sirius. This is not a substitute for pigeons, as fun. In 252 million years ago, the Permian-Triassic extinction event took place, destroying 96% of marine species and 73% of land vertebrate species. Most likely, multiple eruptions were the cause of the extinction. The air was filled with ash and carbon dioxide. There was very little sunlight, plus lava was flowing everywhere. Anyone would die in this environment. The dinosaurs then arrived to replace the extinct species. But the great dinosaurs didn't just divide the planet among themselves. Continents also moved. About 175 million years ago, Pangaea began to break up. The Atlantic and other oceans appeared, and the world began to take the shape of its currents as we see them today. At this time, you can find the first pine tree, grasshoppers, and bees. About 50 million years ago, the ruler over the Earth then passed to the mammals. Without the dinosaurs, they began to feel freedom and actively spread out the Earth and evolving. In the meantime, the length of a day has reached almost 24 hours, and the temperature stabilizes at near 24 degrees Celsius or 75 degrees Fahrenheit. About 8 to 4 million years ago, according to scientists, an important event occurred. The ancestors of modern apes began to separate themselves from our ancestors. Each of them has its own evolutionary path. About 4 million years ago, the climate on the planet is once again changing. Of course, this didn't happen directly, but it was the climate that turned some dense forests into savannas. According to one theory, it was that made our distant ancestors start descending from the trees to their full height and start looking for food. They are not the only species that have begun to struggle for survival. Many are trying to adapt to change, but in the end, only humans made it so far as they created the universe of the wheel and Netflix. 1,400,000 years ago, Homo erectus started to colonize Eurasia. 790,000 years ago, they already knew how to use fire. What was the actual population of the Earth during this period? It's a bit hard to calculate. You know, the population census at that time wasn't very good. And then about 300,000 years ago, Homo sapiens appeared, humans who could think. They appeared and began to fill the whole Earth so actively that they could not stop. If about 130,000 years ago, the number of our ancestors ranged from 100,000 to 300,000 individuals. Then 40,000 years ago, human expansion covered almost the entire Earth. At the moment, the world population is 8,200,000,000 people, and growing. However, the planet is changing along with the people. So who knows what historical changes await us in the future? Okay, if you like this video, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to Astro Power channel if you haven't already, and click the bell to receive notifications about new exciting videos waiting for you. Goodbye, and see you again in the next video.